The good ones, you know it instinctively, and I mean, it always baffled me. And I mean, I didn't know anything when I got into this business about golf course management. But when you got to know some of these guys and you could see their intuition, they could walk out onto a property and see quickly there's something wrong here. They may not know exactly what's going on, but the intuition has always been there. And the dedication to watching this property that they're managing as their own has always blown my mind. And the best superintendents, that's never changed. I mean, you know this as well as I do. Certainly working in the field as recruiting now, it's hard to get superintendents that see that intuition quickly and to manage, to hire somebody that has that intuition.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
Well, I am super excited today to be joined by a longtime friend, Mr. Joel Simmons, and I'll just kind of take back an interesting story. The first time I ever met Joel and the team at EarthWorks, I actually think I may have been an assistant in Philadelphia, but really kind of it came full circle when I was at Sparrows Point. And for so many people, this story is going to resonate. We were just dealing with a quagmire of really poor soils on a really difficult property, pretty much at sea level, and place flooded. Just in general, really tough soils kind of would go back and forth. One day you'd be bone dry, the next day you'd be sopping wet. Nothing seemed to be working. And I had just been doing my own research. It wasn't like Joel was hanging out, outside my door, knocking down and saying, "Hey, let's go, let's use our product line." And I had just been doing some research and had a good connections with a group out of DC who are loyalists to Joel Simmons, jokingly aside, but individuals that had been using a lot of the products and on their programs and biological soil management philosophy. And so I just said, you know what, I'm going to change something here and do something different, even though it might be slightly different than what some of my training and background and familiarity is. I want to sprinkle some of this in. And I would say it was a game changer for me and the way we manage the property, the greens, and the performance. So I know that's a glowing endorsement to start off. Many people probably have had that same story. And man, I just want to say, even to today, we were joking before Joel came on air. We are subscribers now of the EarthWorks lawn care and landscape program. We had some 822 put out. We have the best yard in state knowledge, and we've got quite the harvest in our garden this year.
You keep sending me great pictures. I love it. I don't remember you from Philly, but I remember vividly Sparrows Point. And yeah, that was a pretty miserable place to try to grow grass. I think you were introduced to Jack Higgins first, and then Jack said, "Hey, you got to come and see this guy, and this soils are horrible." And, it's funny because I grew up in the Baltimore area, so Sparrows Point was pretty near and dear to my heart, and I knew the area fairly well. But yeah, when I remember first about you was that you're trying to grow grass on some of the worst soils that I'd seen in a very long time. And yeah, it was a little, had to hit you over the head, I think, a little bit just to help you kind of discover things. And luckily you did. And you turned it around pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, curiosity has always been somewhat of a strength, and I really appreciate that. So I've been a fortunate guest on the EarthWorks podcast, which, by the way, man, I just want to give kudos. Like, when I talk to industry people, through the podcast or just out in the industry, I think everyone references the EarthWorks podcast as the best podcast in golf course management and turfgrass. And I'm not saying that to blow smoke. I hear it from everybody. It's just been cool from my side to just see the evolution of you and the company and the things that you guys are doing in a very sometimes conservative industry.
Yeah, I mean, did you see the Dr. White interview? I mean, that was one of my favorites of all time. We've done over 350, and I finally got Dr. White from Rutgers on to talk about rhizophagy, and I told Jack that, hey, I got Dr. White. You want to join me, because Jack was kind of the one who introduced it to us. And he just, he just blew up. I mean, he was so excited, and we were like little kids in a candy shop. We're like, oh my God, it's Dr. White, it's Dr. White. It was like a hero was coming on board, and he and I had lunch afterwards, and we're like all buzzed up and like, wow, that was the coolest thing ever. But it was really very special to have Dr. White come and join us on a podcast that we've been doing since COVID. I mean, that was Jack Higgins's idea, and because COVID scared the bejesus out of us. I mean, certainly as a business owner, and you remember those days, but as a business owner of probably at that point 30 some years in the business, I didn't even know if we were going to survive. I didn't know if anybody was going to survive. Golf courses, were closed. And, I mean, our business, as and your business is the same, is toe to toe. It's face to face. And we couldn't do that anymore. And I'm like, wow, how do we, I don't know what to do. I mean, I was at a loss. So Jack came up and said, hey, want me to do a podcast? It's a great idea. I didn't know what a podcast was, but I thought it was a great idea. So since that day, in I think it was May of 2020, and we haven't missed a single beat. And we get thousands of people that listen to it, and surprisingly enough, we have a lot of people that come back and listen to our Tyler Bloom podcast. I think there's 3 of them now, and every week you get a new podcast, and you go through the list of what are they also listening to, because you get somebody new and they'll go back through the list, and the Tyler Bloom podcasts are always popping up there. So whatever you're doing, my friend, you're doing it well, and you've I can say I knew you when. Now I have to schedule my time with you on a computer. It's like, what? I knew him when.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've done well.
Well, I'm still the number 2 or 3 podcast in the industry, so we got some room.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll be retiring soon, so maybe you can take over. Who knows?
Yeah, you're the gold standard. So talk to me about the evolution of Joel Simmons and EarthWorks and kind of your journey. Like, how did you get to EarthWorks, and sort of, I know we talked previously about, hey, you were in the recruiting space at one point too, if I remember this. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, the long version of this, and I'll try to keep it short, is I was a county extension agent, and most people listening probably don't even know what the hell a county extension agent is anymore. Back in when in my days, I hate to say those terms, but I was thrilled to get this job working for Penn State as a county agent in Northampton County, Pennsylvania. And in those days, you had to have a specialty. And I thought, well, how about turf? No, that's taken. How about this? How about that? No, that's taken. I ended up becoming a grape expert. I became a viticulturist through Penn State, and I traveled all over the country talking, wine grapes mostly, really. And there was a small industry in Northampton County. Northampton County is the Allentown, Easton area of Pennsylvania, far eastern edge. And I got to know this guy who was growing grapes in the town. And he said to me, "Hey, you gotta meet this guy down the hill. He's crazy and brilliant at the same time. And quite honestly, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but I think you will." And his name was Jerry Brunetti. And so I got to know Jerry as a county extension agent, and he was in fact incredibly brilliant. And he spent a lot of years de-educating me, taking my wonderful university expertise of pH and NPK and turning it into something of value. And but it was a very slow process. I'm a very, very slow learner, and he would have been the first to tell you if he was still with us. Unfortunately, we lost him. But he and I became dear friends. He owned a company called Agronomics, dealing with animal health care. And I left Extension and I became a recruiter, a headhunter, which was a great experience because it helped me learn how to sales call. I mean, it helped me learn the sales and the business side of business. And I did it for about 5 years. I finally made enough money to feed myself because Extension doesn't pay very well. It didn't back then. And then, I kind of got tired of it. I wanted to get back into our industry. And I talked to Jerry and he said, "Why don't you come work for me?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great, but I don't want want to work with cows. He said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, why don't we start a lawn care company, a franchise lawn care company? And we had formulated 545, which is still one of our biggest selling products, and Kick, which is one of our biggest selling liquid products. And that was going to be the backbone of this franchise company. And I gave up my job, and all sorts of life changes were happening. And I called Jerry and I said, I don't want to be a franchise lawn care company. Why don't we just sell this stuff? So I took, he of course said that, yeah, I've been trying to tell you that for years, but like I said, I'm pretty hard headed. So I started cold calling lawn care companies. I mean, I'd go to the library and photocopy yellow pages. Most people listening don't even know what a yellow page is, and or a library for that matter. And that's how I started the business. And we started with 545 and Kick. And man, this was in a time. This was in the early '90s. When the concept of biological soil management, which we pretty much kind of established, was nothing. In fact, we were criticized by every single academic in the world. And luckily, again, I was too hard-headed and stupid to even understand what the criticism was about. So I just kept plugging along. And that's how this little project of ours started. And I mean, it's not been an easy run, but it has been rewarding. I think I can say comfortably that the concept of biological soil management is now well entrenched in our industry, in the turfgrass industry, and it's encouraging and very rewarding to see, especially young superintendents and assistants, asking good questions and learning, much like you were. I mean, you were a perfect example because, you had problems and you weren't sure how to get out of them. And we came in and started talking gibberish to you. And, I was probably confusing and not sure. I mean, luckily I had, like you had referenced, some friends in that Baltimore, Washington area that had already kind of gone down that road. But it was a time when, we were talking, nonsense and being told that it's undoable and it's unmanageable and it's too expensive and it doesn't work. I still hear it from a lot of folks, but for the most part today, I don't think there's a golf course shop in the country that doesn't have something that's carbon based in it. And I think that's the change that the industry has really taken on, which I'm very proud to say I had a big part of. So it's been an interesting run.
You certainly are a pioneer in that. And I think about my upbringing in the industry, and it certainly wasn't talked about as it is today. And
No.
so much of your competition is introducing carbon-based philosophies
we call it copying, but you can say introducing if you like.
There you go. I like that. That's really funny, but it's interesting now to see how much that has changed in the industry. And that's pretty cool to be a part of that. And the one thing that I took away, and even I see this in my own business now, is simplicity. It's actually a very simple program to follow, and it's not overly complex. And ultimately, like what we saw is the soil microbe populations just started actually doing the work for us. The biggest turnaround that I saw was we come into the spring a lot healthier and you'd be kicking off, and it wasn't like trying to play catch up. So you felt like you were already ahead of the game. And as you know, in the mid-Atlantic, in many parts of the country, it's so temperamental. You could have a really warm winter season. You could have a really a lot of different fluctuations, whether it's snow, rain, freeze, thaw, whatever the case may be.
103 degrees like it is today.
Yeah, exactly. But I was
stupid.
We came out of the spring in better shape because of that. So we were ahead of the game and not playing catch up.
And that, it's funny because that was one of the biggest criticisms that we got, was that, oh, this stuff isn't going to work until deep June. There's still consultants running around that you and I both know well, that will remain nameless, that will say, oh, yeah, that stuff's not going to do anything until the soils warm up until late June. And, and if that were true, I would never have sold the second bag, because you wouldn't have bought a second bag if it didn't do anything until June and then all kicked out. But when you're working with soil biology, warming up a soil by providing energy into that soil, which is really all we're doing is we're providing the food energies via carbon and minerals. It does warm up a soil and gets the system working. And one of our biggest growth markets right now is the lawn care industry, and these guys are changing rapidly because they've been working on this ChemLawn model for so long that is an a la carte model that encourages them to over apply, and then they get hit with price increases in the middle of the season like we've seen recently and we saw in 2008, and they're losing their shirts. But the guys that are taking on biological soil management in lawn care, the first thing that they notice is that they're the first lawns to green up. I did an interview recently where a lawn care operator was talking about how he was working in the snowy area, and the lawns that he was applying the EarthWorks products to were the first lawns to melt the snow away because the soil is starting to warm up. And it just goes against everything, all the criticisms that I've been thrown at and all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, having a Mother Nature on your side is really, quite honestly, and I've been saying this for 40 years, the only way to work a soil. You have to have Mother Nature. And we've been working against her. I think that is changed. I think that I can honestly, that has changed in every spectrum. I mean, I do seminars on a regular basis where I'd have 50, 60 superintendents in the audience. And 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, there was probably a good percentage that didn't have anything in their shop that was carbon based. And I don't think there's a single golf course. I'd love to find the one guy who doesn't have a humic acid or a sugar or a kelp meal or a fish meal or something that's in one of his products or her products that isn't carbon based today. And I don't think you can find that.
It's so funny you say that because when we do site visits, whether that's for a superintendent search or just in general consulting, and we don't get into deep agronomic consulting, our focus would be more on the organizational consulting. But I always go and look in the FERT shed, chem building, and it is interesting. I would agree with you, man. And usually it's EarthWorks products, which is
well, I hope so.
Yes, yes, but it is interesting to see that, and I don't remember that coming up through the ranks of that being like persistent or even friends talking about it. So it's cool that you said.
And you know what that says to you is that, I mean, superintendents are not stupid. I mean, they've been treated that way by some of the academics as, they've been force fed this stuff, but then they start, they're intuitive and they're brilliant and they know what works. And the reason why, and this isn't just EarthWorks, there's a whole industry now that has, kind of gone down this road. The reason it's changed is because people are, superintendents are intuitive and they know what works. I mean, you saw it firsthand. And when that light bulb goes off, it's the greatest feeling for us. When that guy starts to say, wow, I should have been doing this a long time ago. And it's been incredibly rewarding.
Well, I'll give you one last little shout out. So I'm thinking last year when we sold our house in Bloomsburg to move to State College, probably the big reason we were able to charge more is because our lawn actually was in top shape.
Oh, good.
We owe you a commission.
Yes, I was just going to suggest that, actually. It's funny you say that because one of the things that's been really rewarding for me as well is working with universities. And I was working with some folks at a couple universities, and the grounds manager at this particular university introduced me to the president of the university, and he came to this grounds manager and just was accolade after accolade because he had turned the property around. I mean, he was a huge EarthWorks user, but he was also very intuitive agronomically. But he turned the property around, and what this president of this pretty substantial university said to me was, "We are now using the grounds as a recruitment tool." And he goes, "We could never have done that before because for the, you go to most universities and, it's dog tracks, I mean, it's worn areas and, not a whole lot of, I mean, it's hard to manage a property of that size. And this particular property was really, I mean, he had turned the grass around, the whole dead areas where kids walked that wasn't there anymore. And I remember at that time, my son was going through university tours And I remember going to a lot of them, in our area anyway. And I'm like, wow, these are horrible. And I'm listening to some of the parents, and they're like, oh, this place looks horrible. I don't want to send, little Johnny here or whatever. And I'm like, I'm snickering to myself because I understand what these parents were saying, but the universities were, these particular universities were like, wow, this has become a tool of recruitment. And that was rewarding. That was really pretty special.
Yeah, that's pretty a unique compliment that you probably didn't expect. So, switching gears a little bit, what is, in your perspective, stayed the same and what has changed in golf course maintenance today? And especially, we could talk more recently in the last 5 years, just the interest in golf in general and just the investment
Yeah.
value in golf. But from your perspective, what's the same and what's changed from your perspective?
Well, I mean, what's the same is that golf course superintendents are incredible human beings, and they're very smart and they're very intuitive. The good ones know it instinctively, and I mean, it always baffled me. And I mean, I didn't know anything when I got into this business about golf course management, but when you got to know some of these guys, and you could see their intuition. They could walk out onto a property and see quickly there's something wrong here. They may not know exactly what's going on, but the intuition has always been there, and the dedication to watching this property that they're managing as their own has always blown my mind. And the best superintendents, that's never changed. I mean, you know this as well as I do, certainly working in the field as recruiting now. It's hard to get superintendents that really get, that see that intuition quickly, and to manage, to hire somebody that has that intuition is not an easy vet. And I think you do it as well as anybody, which is why I think you're as successful as you are. But what certainly has changed is technology. I mean, it's changing so quickly, and not even just the equipment technology, the robots and all that other stuff, but even the agronomy. I mean, we talked a little bit about a podcast that I did recently with Dr. White at Rutgers on rhizophaging, and I'm closer to the end of my career than I am to the beginning, but I get so excited, as does fortunately my whole team, when we see these kind of levels of intuition. And if you don't mind me giving a shameless pitch for the EarthWorks podcast, the podcast that we did with Dr. White was fascinating, and he's a professor at Rutgers University, and he came up. Well, he didn't actually come up, but listen to the podcast. But he talks deeply about rhizophaging and these biological systems that we're starting to discover. I mean, we really only know maybe 5% of what the soil biome is all about. But when you see stuff like what Dr. White is talking about, I wish I had another 30 years to live through what's going to happen, not only from a technological standpoint, from equipment, but from this biological standpoint, and being able to discover that, because there's a lot out there. I mean, there's so much more for us to learn, and the best superintendents are the ones, and you were one of these, that just loved to learn. And those are the guys that we like to hitch our wagon to, because I love finding a young superintendent or even an assistant, and sometimes the assistants are even more fun, that are just sponges. And they just come and they latch on and just ask questions, and they just want to learn. And there's so much to learn agronomically, technologically, professionally. I mean, what you've done and provided our industry has been phenomenal. I mean, where do you get the kind of professional training you get, from your group? I mean, we don't have that. I mean, I worked in a corporate environment and we kind of had that there, but not in our industry.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's interesting you say about the learning, and I was thinking about assistants come to us and talk about, how do I get to the next step? How do I get the right mentor? And I'm like, well, really, it starts with you. Like, no one's telling you you can't pop on YouTube or listen to a podcast at night and do the research. We talk about technology. I'm like a sicko when it comes to Claude and ChatGPT, but I've got a thing that sets
There's one.
Yeah, every morning I get a news brief of all industry type things that tells me what's happening in the industry, what are hot topics, because I just want to know. That's how I
Yeah.
keep fresh. That's how I keep in tune with what's going on in the industry. And then clearly going out to golf courses and touring properties is probably the best way to learn, is just going and observing.
Yeah. And that's the best thing for any young person in this business, is to pay attention to the people that are your mentors. Even if they're horrible. I mean, even if they're, and I don't want to sound derogatory, but even if your superintendent is god awful, you're going to learn something from him. Hopefully you find a home where you got a guy that can really teach you well. And that's the place to hit your wagon to as quickly as you can. But there's always something to learn. What scares me, though, and you kind of broached this, is, the agronomy piece of this has been so strange because our technology is going so fast that, some of us at this, at this many years in the game, look at agronomy have, as having been kind of a lost art, because it's so easy. You can take out so many chemicals now. You can, it's so easy to grow grass. But to really learn the agronomy of what we do is the foundation of everything. That's not advancing as fast as I would like to see. I'd like to see young guys really learning the core basics of how to read a soil test, of what it means, of soil biology, of soil physics, of soil chemistry. And that still becomes a challenge at times. I mean, when we give these lectures, sometimes it's like, wow, I never heard that.
So
It's
it's
too bad.
interesting you say that. One of the things that I'll educate committees on in our search process is I'm looking for the person that bleeds greenskeeping. Like that is who
Yeah.
they are. There's almost like an identity to it. And because they're researching, they're learning the people they talk to, who's in their inner circle, how they explain the technical sides of things, how they talk about their day on the golf course from the start all the way through the end, tells you a lot about a person if they're really into it and they're all in, or if they're just doing it because it's a job and they by happenstance fell into this industry and they're just doing it because they're collecting a paycheck. I'm looking for the person that really bleeds this stuff. And you can,
Yeah.
sometimes people will ask me, what are the traits? How do you become that like top person? For me, it's an engagement factor. Like, how engaged are they into it? You use the word intuitiveness, but I like engagement because I think the people that just bleed it and it's the thing they think about from the moment they wake up in the morning, maybe that's
Right.
too hardcore, if they've got significant others, but it's just something that they're really passionate about. Uh,
Yeah.
I think,
Well, that's what this industry is, right? I mean, these guys, I mean, it's sometimes a thankless job.
mm,
You're getting crapped on by every golfer that comes through, and greens committee members and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you look back at what you accomplished that day, and you can really say, "Wow, look what I've done, and look what we've done as a team." And I think probably the most important question to ask you is, how do you vet somebody like that? I mean, how do you really find that out when you're interviewing somebody for a position? How do you know?
Man, I think it's a multi-step process. You're never going to get that just purely off of a resume, a cover
No.
letter, but it's all these little micro steps throughout a process. Whether for us, it's a combination of a Zoom interview, personality, profiling. We use predictive index, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
I think it's the references and the people that they associate with is a real big one for me. And a lot of times we'll get off record calls on behalf of candidates that really can separate them. Certainly, I think from an agronomic technical standpoint, it's just having a conversation and diving into things like,
Yeah.
hey, what's your philosophy on soil testing? How do you use those? How frequent do you use them? Who do you pull from? Talk to me a little bit about like your POA management programs. What's your
Right.
philosophy? And sometimes it's geeking out over those details, and you can hear that in the person when you speak to somebody that's just speaking in generalities. They're probably not. I can probably push and find some things that would pressure test their true like beliefs and knowledge. And then you follow up with the references. Hey, what do you think about this? Did this person really do this? So it's a multi-step process. Um, Again, like for me, there's so many great networks that are in this industry, and I think we've done a really good job of like not aligning to one specific network.
Yeah. There are. Yeah.
of superintendents, right? And kind of seeing different styles and probably extracting some of that information. That's what I love about my job, quite honestly, is because I feel like I have an inside track to seeing 100 different ways to do the job. But there are some tried and true lineages in this industry that
Yes, there are.
this is what you're going to get. And there's consistency from that, and they're successful wherever they go. So I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded answer, but the network is important to me. Like I said, I think maybe sometimes people can play into the network side of it a lot, but when you're talking about some of the clubs that, we're fortunate and blessed to work with, the margin for error is razor thin.
Yeah, there isn't one
There
actually.
isn't
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And so, those members have an expectation because what I've sort of learned is that's the expectation they've had in their life and how they've been
Yeah.
successful. And they've proven their opportunity to join a club of this caliber. And that's what they're going to expect from the staff that they go to or that works at these clubs. So I think that's important. Like, and again, I don't
Yeah.
want to sit and say pedigree's everything. I'm not in total belief of that, but working for the right mentor at the right club to get the exposures you need, I think is super critical.
And then having that network that they can lean on. I mean, that's, I love working with these, networks that when a guy goes off to, another part of the country, he's still got a lifeline. He's still got somebody that he can call and say, hey, dude, I got something going on here. I don't know what the hell it is. And, 5 guys will call him back and talk to him for an hour and a half and say, do this, do that, or think about this. And, it gives them at least confidence that they can make it happen. That's huge.
You talked about one of the things I wanted to get your perspective on is the classes that you put for assistants and the soil. I believe that the Soil First Academy. Like,
Soil First Academy.
How did you develop that, and like how have you seen that evolve over time?
Well, that came from the work I did at Rutgers. I spent 10 years teaching the soils program and the 2-year program at Rutgers, and was probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And literally thousands of guys have gone through that class. And some of my best friends in this business still to this day were guys that I had at Rutgers. And when that ended, I decided to just take the course out on the road and consolidate it. Obviously, I mean, I took it from a 10-week program to a 4-hour program, but it was basically the same spiel. I mean, it's funny because I sometimes feel, and I think a lot of people listening would say the same thing about me. I have a spiel. I mean, I believe very strongly in biological soil management and the whole agronomy of it. I mean, I'm constantly trying to learn new things like rhizophagy, via Dr. White and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what works. And the foundation is really what we've been trying to preach. And because it's been so hard to get through that, it's been essential to really keep those basics there. And that's why I say agronomy really has to always be learned. I mean, it's like learning how to read and write. You can't circumvent that. You have to know. At the end of the day, you can have a million great tools in the toolbox, but if you don't know how to read, the basic agronomy of it all, you're gonna find yourself caught short, and it's going to be a problem. So, yeah, the academy started, and we've done. I can't even tell you how many thousands of these classes over the years. I hired recently a gentleman by the name of Marshall Evans in Florida, and I made the mistake, and I've told him this. I said, Marshall, I work for you, so if you need me, call me. And he's had me on a plane like every week for like months. I'm like, Marshall, I wasn't really serious about that, but it's been great. Because he's now in the Florida market, and I always thought that biological soil management in Florida wasn't going to work well because it's light sandy low CEC soils, and I thought it would take a long time for the flywheel to catch. I was dead wrong. I mean, proving how you can make mistakes even after 30 years of doing it. That's it's the important lesson there is to keep your eyes open and keep learning, and I think that's one thing that we do as well as anybody. But it's been very good. I mean, it's, getting, I say this about kids at Rutgers or even in these classes, you look around the room and you see the light bulbs go off. It's like popping popcorn. The kernel's popping. Here's one over here. There's always a couple that never pop and sit in the bottom. But there's
We call them
GMs
late
in the
bloomers.
industry. They
Yeah.
can be something else in the industry. They don't have to be agronomists.
Yeah.
But it's been rewarding and to watch the growth of a lot of these guys. And now even today watching young assistants learning the business and following their mentors and hopefully learning the core basics and not circumventing or cheating the system and trying to get around that. And
And
that's you're doing that with your vetting, and it's not an easy thing. I mean, I try to discover those guys all the time.
it's interesting you say that because I'm thinking of, and I say this to our team internally, is the foundations, the basics. Like we got to get basics out of these people because everybody's going to talk about GPS sprayers,
Right.
moisture meters, AI.
That's the sexy stuff.
Yeah, like I want to know what are you doing at 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of July, and what's your next step in the next day? Like
Yeah.
I want to know that, and how are you setting yourself up in the morning for success with your team and organizing your day? But yeah, those fundamentals, man, it really comes back to that, and I hear that from committee members. Interestingly enough, when I think about these search processes, the really good clubs on the committees have pretty high, not only high golf IQ people, but
Yeah.
individuals that have served on these committees or has been a greens chair for 7, 8, 10 years, maybe legacy members. We want to see the committees constructed that way so there's continuity around the agronomy team and
Yeah.
that department, not so much of a, hey, this person got on because they're buds with so and so, or they visit all these top 100 clubs and they know what greatness looks like. We want to know at the facility that there's continuity in the governance. And most of the time, I would tell you the committees are talking about the fundamentals. Yeah,
Basics.
they do get a little bit of a high on technology and autonomous mowers and things of that, but the good ones and the great clubs, they focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah. I mean, in our world, it's soil testing, and I compare that to blood work from a doctor. I mean, I don't want to go to a doctor and have him say, hey, you got this problem, take this. Well, how do you know it's going to work? I mean, I want to know what the real basic stuff is. I mean, do the blood work and let me know if I've got that piece of the equation right. And that's what a soil test is all about. I mean, I still do 15,000 soil tests a year with golf course superintendents all across the country. It's been a lot less over the last number of years, but at least it's still been consistent. Certainly the guys that I work closely with, we do what we call monitoring tests, and I'll get on the phone or on a Zoom call with them and their assistants, and we'll just review the tests. But if there's something on that blood work or on that soil test that's off and you don't fix it, it's just going to fester and become a bigger problem. Or you go into a place like Sparrows Point where the soil sucks and you don't fix it, you're going to constantly be chasing your tail and trying to, put out a fire that, is a fire that you could easily have put out a year ago. And that's where a really successful superintendent comes from. And it's not about a GPS sprayer or an autonomous mower. It's about going back to the very, very basics and understanding, what is going on under my feet every single day, and how do I improve that environment? How do I get my chemistry working? How do I get a better environment for biology? And that's what makes these guys incredibly successful. And that's part of that intuition.
Yeah, I think I heard this on a podcast episode between you and Kevin Hicks, and you probably can elaborate, but how do you see with, let's focus on soil testing and maybe the advent of AI and efficiency of being able to look at those reports and aggregate
Yeah.
the information, whether it's at a facility level or just
Yep.
broader terms. How do you see some of that technology influencing maybe what you guys are doing, product suggestions, agronomic suggestions?
Well, it's funny you ask that because we've been completely focused on AI programming recently. I was a big brother in the Big Brothers program, and my little brother, who has been part of my family for 35 years now, is an AI specialist. He's worked with some of the biggest companies, so he's actually on our team, and we're building an AI-based program. And what it's going to allow us to do is and Kevin Hicks is the perfect example because he's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, radically different environments. He's dealing with radically different things. For us to come in, and we've been, not great about this over the last number of years. We've had a pretty generic standard program, but Kevin's world is radically different. So what these AI programs are actually allowing us to do now is that we can sit there. Let's say I'm working with Tyler Bloom at Sparrows Point. I can have all that AI program, tuned in exactly to your soil test, not the guy down the street or the guy across the country. So we are really, really excited about what's going on with us. And hopefully by the fall, we'll have a pretty elaborate program that's going to allow us to really, when we're talking to a superintendent, every time we feed that information in, it learns that environment better. It learns mostly what the water is doing to the soil, and everything else that's going on. So, these are things that were hard to do in a stagnant environment, but in an AI environment, the ability for us to turn left and right and up and down is going to be great. And again, I wish I had another 20 years of career in me that I could really see this come to fruition, because it's going to be very exciting when we can go and really fine point, your property as opposed to the guys down the street, plugging in your water, which is the biggest input, and your soils and your environment, as opposed to a generic across the country thing. It's going to make it, it's going to be a game changer, and we're really excited about this. So stay tuned. We'll be talking about it on our podcast a lot. Kevin has really been spearheading this, and he's been doing a great job, and he's excited. And it's funny that you talk about AI, because I had a team of folks that are like, oh, AI, I don't want to have anything to do with it, and they're the most excited people about it right now, and it's been fun to watch. But I'm probably one of the guys that says, yeah, I don't want to get into that, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. So we're gonna learn a lot about this technology and how it affects. It's not going to change. It's not going to change the actual data, but what it is going to change is how we react to the data, and that's really the key thing.
Yeah, you'll get I'm laughing as you're saying it, because I have one or two seasoned skeptics on our team on AI, and I'm on the extreme side of the AI.
Yeah,
they kind of put me back to equilibrium, and they balance me out. So we have been using it for a couple different avenues. One, basically taking what's in my head of what success looks like and developing more of a structured process. We were already creating a structured process. Well, now we're taking that information that we gather in these searches to identify, here's what success looks like. Now we can go in from the start of the search and educate club decision makers. Here's what success looks like, and here's what it's going to cost.
Yeah.
You tell me what range you want to go to.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what success looks like, and this is the experiences you're going to get. And now we'll target that in the search process. Now, most clubs, I will tell you, are very much open-minded in the sense that they're not looking for one extreme of the spectrum of superintendent qualifications and experience versus maybe a young up-and-comer. They kind of want to see a blend. But I think it's helpful for us to educate the committees, because a lot of times they don't even know what to expect. They've never.
We're on the cutting edge of all this, man. You're on the cutting edge of that, and you've been bringing that to the table for a while now, and it's great to see. And it is a little scary, but so was the real mower probably when it was first made, or the automobile, or any of these technology breakthroughs. The autonomous mower. Who would have ever thought you would see that? Do you go anywhere now where you don't see somebody with an autonomous mower somewhere on the property?
Listen, I was thinking about, the Adaptive Open is coming here at our good friend Ryan Sievert's place at Woodmont, and I was there last year, and man, he's got these things everywhere, and everywhere,
constantly running.
And he was talking to me how they're going to transition pretty much primarily robotic mowers, and everywhere I go now, like, it's one of the first things that I'm like looking for, and it's a question in pretty much every GM or committee member's mind of, do you believe in the autonomous mowers? And I'm like, yeah, because where are you getting labor from? Number two, I think the quality of the presentation, quality of cut, and the detail around that is fantastic.
And the consistency. I mean, it's consistent. I mean, I mean, it's funny because, you look at it, you can tell, you and I can certainly tell, anybody in our side of the industry can tell the cut from an autonomous mower versus a triplex. But still, it's, the job's done and it's good. It's good. And it's, like I said, I don't know that I can say I've been on a golf course recently where I haven't seen at least one or two. I mean, Ryan's unique because he's got a whole bunch of them. And, but yeah, everybody's going to be working with them somewhere down the road, and GPS sprayers and, the turf rad. We've had those folks on our podcast 2 or 3 times. I mean, I love that kind of technology. I mean, I think it's just great and seeing it, but agronomy, got to stick with the basics.
Yeah, this is my last little question for you. One of the things that I have found very interesting in our travels is I think superintendents, as you've mentioned, they're intuitive and they're constantly learning. When you work with maybe a new superintendent or maybe somebody that's dealing with some challenges on the property and they've been used to doing things a certain way for a long, long time, how do you help and how can a superintendent help themselves get out of a little bit of a funk? And I think we've all dealt with that
Yeah,
personally,
yeah.
professionally, where they've been in a funk. How do you see superintendents overcome that? And thinking of Tyler Bloom at Sparrows Point when it needed to kind of
Oh, that was a hard one.
yeah, very hard.
Yeah, that wasn't
Difficult
easy
climb,
at all.
difficult climb.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, it does go back to really helping them discover. I mean, you can't tell anybody anything. I mean, you can't. You're raising kids. I've raised a kid. You can't tell a kid anything. And you can't tell a superintendent anything. And quite honestly, you can't tell me anything. I mean, we all deal with this on a regular basis. So the only thing we can do is help you discover, a different path. I mean, there's not a golf course superintendent out there that can't grow good grass. The real question is, can you grow it easier? Can I make your life easier? Can I help you, not get up in the morning and think, oh my God, 6 green's going to be dead, or everything just fell off the table and it's dead. And it goes back to data. In our case, I mean, we've always laid our heart on soil data. And if I can walk into your office and sit down and show you the data, I mean, and this isn't something that we've made up. It's the blood work of your patient, and you can see that and say, "Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Now maybe I have to rethink the process and make some changes." And then it's all discovery. And it was the case with you. I mean, when we walked into your place and we told you to, hey, do this, do this. I mean, I hope we didn't say go do this, but we helped you discover things and you discovered them on your own. I mean, a business like mine has been very slow and very patient, because it takes a long. I mean, in our early years, it was a very long sales cycle. Today, it's a lot faster because people understand, biological soil management and the need for carbon. But 25, 30 years ago, it was a very slow process, but it was a discovery process. And it was one in which you just basically say, here's what I see, and and here's some suggestions, and then they go out and they start to experiment, and then you get the call, saying, hey, you got to come out here and see this. I'm like, oh, great, I hope this isn't bad. And then you get out there, and they just, their lights, their eyes are all lit up because this is something they'd never seen before. I mean, you saw it when you saw, coming into the spring. It's about discovery. You have to let people discover you can't teach anybody anything. You can help them discover, a different way. But, like I said, we've got great superintendents that can grow great grass. They might work twice as hard to do it than some of the other guys. And I think what we've done is help them make their life a lot easier. And, and you've talked a lot about this in your podcast and in your work, is this life balance. And one of the things that I think that you and I both have brought to the table is this ability to, you don't have to work 180 hours a week anymore. If you can't grow grass in a week's time, but what you are doing, and I think what I'm doing, is we're helping guys do it easier. And you kind of preface this at the beginning of this podcast. We're the generation has changed, and my generation is gone. your generation, you're kind of on one edge of a generation, but these guys that are in their early 30s, they're not going to work like you and I worked. They're not going to work like that, and we're not going to change them. So don't even bother. Just help them discover ways in which they can work within their, expectation. And I know we can do it. I mean, you do it all the time, and I think I can say comfortably that we do it all the time. We help them make the job easier so that they don't have to work 180 hours a week like you did when you came into this industry, and the way I worked when I started this company. So I see that as a great movement forward. It's difficult. I mean, even with my own team, I see, a generational difference, but, got great people and love them to death. And they do phenomenal stuff. They just do it differently than I did it. And it's not good or bad or indifferent. It's just like, it's how I did it. It's the only thing I knew. And, it's how you were when you came up the ranks as well. You worked your ass off.
You're talking about discovery. I could tell you one of the light bulb moment, one of the best moments for me, and again at the superintendent search level, is when you hear the committee there's an inflection point at some point in the process. They'll hear sort of a very direct, brutal honesty assessment after I've kind of spent time on the facility. And a lot of time it's looking at the governance and the committees and the decisions and the support, the lack of support they put into the agronomy department. And then once they hear the candidates kind of saying the same things, at some other point in the process, you can see the light bulb go off like, this is what we've been missing, as a club. Same thing, even at the super level, I've found a real pivot in terms of how we work with club or superintendents specifically to recruit assistants and equipment managers. There's the same discovery phase. Me going in and telling them exactly, here's what the deal is, and here's exactly everything that you need to know to be successful. That's one method. And we try to be brutally honest and be brutally honest with people up front. So there's no surprises in the search process, but it doesn't click until they start seeing and hearing more from the candidates at other points. And they have to discover they've got to change how they're approaching
exactly
how they're approaching things versus like maybe before the perspective would be the workforce is going to change for me and they're going to follow the order.
Right. Yes. Do what I say.
Yeah. That's not working anymore, Bows.
That doesn't work. Never did, really, ever. I mean, it worked begrudgingly if it ever worked, but it never really was good. And, and again, you and I have been talking on podcasts now for a bunch of years. And I remember when you started this whole, little project of yours, and you've brought a lot of things to this industry that are, eye-opening. And I commend you, and I have a great pride in you. And I feel like I've kind of watched you change as you've gone up. But the one thing that I think we can always say that's going to be consistent forever is going to be change. And you can't sit there and expect to do the same thing. It's, what is that? The definition of stupidity.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you definitely highlighted that, and work-life balance is critical. And, I think you've really brought that into this industry well. And it's good. It's a good thing. It's, I mean, we all need to be able to, not go crazy and lose our families and our lives and our health and all that stuff. So, I mean, we can do this as an industry, and you've been instrumental in making those changes, and I commend you. And I'm like I said, I feel like a proud father here. I've seen, I had you on the podcast very early on in your career, and I'm like, wow, he's actually changed quite a bit, which is really good. It's very impressive.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. That's always a nice little reminder. So, well, that's a great way to end this, and we will absolutely do this again. I'm laughing because I think, Joel, I've probably been at you for at least, since we started the podcast. Hey, when can we get you on the podcast? And then I finally was like, I'm just sending him a scheduling link. He'll do it. And,
yeah, well, I don't like change, so I don't like scheduling links. Just call me and it'll do it, old school style. But no, it's good. And I definitely want to get you on our side of the table as well. And maybe even get you in front of, the neat thing about the EarthWorks podcast is it's not me. It's Kevin Hicks, who's got the best radio voice in the industry. And then of course Jack Higgins, who is just a joy to listen to. He's always entertaining, and he's got such passion and enthusiasm. So it's a great diversity of compliments on our side. But I'd love to have maybe Jack or Kevin talk with you as well. So just to kind of mix it up a little bit.
I enjoyed, and I was jealous when Jack did the Ride Around podcast with Josh Saunders.
Yeah.
Like, that's a brilliant idea. And I'm like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
again, I'm following the coattails on the coattails of EarthWorks podcast and the EarthWorks.
As you should. I mean, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, Jack's very into, and he's industrial when it comes to that. He hates the normal anyway, so it's always good. And he's out there doing, and our Mike Small, our marketing director, is always encouraging, yeah, get out there. This is great stuff. And I'm sitting here in my studio and doing a Zoom call. And I'm like, yeah, I'll let Jack do that. It's his gig, so it's good. It's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great industry. It's just, I can't imagine a better life than what we've all been able to accomplish in this industry. And I hope everybody can appreciate, that. And you certainly brought that to the table for a lot of people. And just keep doing that, because like I said, who knows what this thing's going to look like in 10, 20 years from now. You'll be here. I may not be, but you'll be here. Hopefully my guys will still be there doing what we're doing, but there's going to be change, and it's going to be good. Some of it's going to be awkward, but it's going to be fun, and just keep your eyes open.
Where can people find you after the show if they want to learn more about EarthWorks, a little bit of Joel, and a little bit about the team? Where can they find you?
Well, everything is on our website at earthworksturf.com, and we're constantly trying to change that. And there's a lot of information there. I mean, we're putting out, and our team is doing an awful lot of social media as well. You're doing a lot of great stuff there as well, and that's been a big. We didn't even talk about that, but that's been a big change. I mean, we're out on, obviously on Twitter and Instagram, and now I think we're doing TikToks, and which is a little bit more than I'm into. But my team is doing a great job and putting out some really good quick pieces, and the information's out there if you want to find it now, which is kind of cool. That's been a big change in the last 5-10 years.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.